name's Damien Blanket. I interviewed Steven Gloade.
You know, when we were 8 years old, we moved off the reserve and we moved to the neighboring town of Hilding. Went to school in a place called Brookfield, which is right next door. You know, and they were wonderful years. We stayed connected with our communities. I graduated high school, joined the United States Marine Corps, got hurt through basic training. Then I come back home, and the RCMP were having a recruiting session in my home community of Millbrook. And it's funny because at the time, my mother said, "I want you to go to that." And I said, "No, I'm not going to that. I'm going back to the service in a year's time." And she's like, "No, I want you to go to that." And we sort of got in an argument. I remember I went that night to keep her happy. And here I am, 21 years later. I guess mothers know best.
What made you choose to join the RCMP and why?
Well, you know, when I went down to that recruiting presentation, I listened to what they had to say. And for me growing up, give you a little bit of history here. The first First Nation RCMP officers we had in the organization were what they called special constables, guys in the Option 3B program. And for us growing up in Nova Scotia, we had 7 of these guys. And they worked in detachments in and around Nova Scotia. And my mother, I used to remember my mother would come home at times and say that she's seen the guys in town and they were in their uniform and really made them very proud to see our people in uniform. And you know, I love that whole aspect of taking care of our people. I mean, I've dedicated our life to it. Canadians in general, but more so into First Nations policing. So being able to contribute and take care of our people, there's no greater feeling than being able to help out. I mean, we all love being able to help somebody, and doing this job, you can do that. And for me, the RCMP was a step above all the other police forces that are fantastic police forces. But for me, there was no higher honor in serving than in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Who inspired you to want to grow up to be in the RCMP?
That's a good question. You know, my big role models in life were obviously my parents. I got involved in sports and, you know, coaches became role models. Those guys I told you about in the Option 3B program, they were role models. I was fortunate enough because I always had people I would look at in different ways, and I would take what I thought were their best qualities and I would try to live up to those. Again, the RCMP, I guess, would have been a lot of my upbringing about taking care of people and giving back to your community. And so, yeah, I guess it really wasn't one role model, but just a series of different people and some interactions with police growing up. You know, I had ran into a few good police officers, and I was very fortunate. And so, yeah, I guess that's a long answer to a short question. There's no really one role model, but I guess my parents would be the biggest in that whole system.
What have you chosen any other career besides policing or RCMP?
Well, yes, like I mentioned, when I graduated high school, all through high school, I always believed I wanted to be a police officer or in the military. In my high school years, I had determined that I wanted to join the United States Marine Corps because as First Nations people, we're able to cross a border and work freely in the United States, in particular because of the Jay Treaty. And therefore, plus in my case, where my mother was from Boston, it entitled me to dual citizenship, but I joined under the Jay Treaty aspect of a First Nations person. And, you know, I mean, that was my dream, but unfortunately, I had got hurt in basic training, and I had to come home. So, you know, I had 2 choices. I sit around and be mad at the world because my first dream didn't work out. No, I was very fortunate where I realized I had to do something else, and I had a conversation I had with my mother about the mounted police. I went down to that recruiting session and you know, realized that the RCMP for me was a way to go, and yeah, so I pursued that.
All right. For your profile, we decided that your virtue would be truth. So what do you think about the virtue of truth and why is this important to you?
Oh, truth is very important. Truth is very important. There's a lot of aspects to that. Because sometimes being truthful can hurt people in a way. So, there's different ways of delivering things that is important, but you need to be truthful to move forward on things. As I sit here to you, I have to be truthful to you, but I would expect you to be truthful back, and it just applies. I mean, wow, that's a really deep question. But truthful is very important. In particular, I guess I should answer it from this perspective. As a police officer, there's nothing more important than that. If you lie, then your credibility is gone. And when your credibility is gone, your life as a police officer really is over. When you sit on that stand and you give evidence in a court, and if you ever lie when you're doing that, you'll have no credibility left whatsoever. And then that's a big aspect of the job.
Alright. Can you take us through a day in the life of an RCMP officer?
Wow, yeah. Yeah, that's another good question. You know what, that is, depends on what part of my life as a Royal Canadian Mounted Police officer you want to hear about, because you know what, in this organization, there's so many amazing career opportunities, so many wonderful aspects of policing that every day is different. I'll give you the most common one of my experience, and that's doing what we call general duty policing. That's being out in the uniform. It would be the RCMP officer you see driving around the police car. And doing that role is a key part. It's a really important part of a service that we give to Canadians. But one of the great things was you never knew what you were going to expect in a run of a day. Things change on a daily basis. So you could go into work one day and you could be doing a school talk or a presentation or an interview like this here, and then 10 minutes down, or half hour later, you're dealing with a completely different aspect of policing, maybe a violent situation, and then maybe 2 hours after that, you have the unpleasant job of going to tell somebody that their loved one has passed away or has been taken as a result of a car accident. The job brings so many different aspects to it that it's hard to describe in a very short period of time. But for me, it's a wonderful job. I love it because you're not confined to an office space. You're out doing different things, and the work's always changing.
Right. What advice could you give, could tell to students that would want to join this profession?
You know what? It's about believing in yourself. It's about taking care of other people, giving back. And you grow up in one of our communities anywhere in the country, things are always, for the most part, a little tougher. Our challenges faced by our youth in the communities are tougher. And if you set your goals right and you work hard and you do things for the right reasons, things will work out. And I mean, we all know what it's like, peer pressure, whether it's in one of our communities or whether it's another community in Canada. Peer pressure is a tough thing to fight, and it's tough to get away from. But the best thing is setting a goal. If you have a goal and you think policing is the way to go, and let's say, how old are you?
17.
17, what grade?
In grade 11.
Grade 11. So, if it's something you wanted to do, you could set a goal for that and say, okay, you know what, the best advice is when I know the guys or girls are going to get into some trouble over here, I'm just staying away from it, not doing it. You also know that, okay, well, what are you doing right now? I'm not asking you this, I just mean in a general statement. You got to ask yourself, what are you doing for the betterment of your community? How are you helping out? Are you helping out? Are you doing the best you can do, right? So I guess the advice part is stay focused, stay out of trouble the best way you can, and give back to your community, take care of people.